Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and please accept our apologies that we're starting a few minutes late today. We just had an unfortunate delay, but nonetheless, we'll immediately get our briefing started. My name is Kusela Sangone. I'm the National Communications Manager of the African National Congress. Today's briefing is looking and focusing on the Organisational Renewal and Organisational Design document. This is towards the National Policy Conference that will be held from the 30th of June to the 5th of July of this year. These briefings really are intended to ensure that members of the public, structures of the ANC are able to engage and deliberate on the policies that the National Executive Committee is putting forward for National Policy Conference. NEC Committee on Development, Comrade April Shataproof Figile Mbalula. Sitting on stage with him is a member of the ANC NEC and also member of the Organizational Development Subcommittee, Comrade Humphrey Memezi, and on my left is the ANC Provincial Secretary of Gauteng, Comrade Hope Papo. He's also, by virtue of being a Provincial Secretary, a member of the ANC NEC Subcommittee on Organizational Development. So without wasting any time, I'm going to ask Comrade Fikile to come and speak to us. But I want to make the point right at the start, ladies and gentlemen, that these briefings are focused on the policy documents. There are comrades from the Ministry of Police who are present here today, sitting in front. If there are any issues that you would want to raise with the Minister in his capacity as Minister of Police, please do see them after the briefing, and they will be happy to make an appointment for you to discuss those with the Minister. So, Comrade Figile, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we'll definitely not discuss police today. First and foremost, this morning, we turn our attention to the topic organizational renewal and design. The chief aim of the discussion document is to provoke robust discussions. The discussion document approaches the debate from a historical and theoretical perspective and creates a platform for debates and ventures into specific recommendations in order to develop a roadmap to the National Policy Conference in June 2017 and ultimately the 54th National Conference in December 2017. The genesis of organizational renewal in contemporary ANC begins in the ANC National Conference in Mafeking. It recognized that whereas the 94 breakthrough ushered a completely new environment in the entire existence of the ANC, it has taken the organization some time to determine how to operate within this context. Conference went further to articulate that through the democratic order has created opportunities for organizations that were barely considered possible 5 years ago. It has presented challenges for which many of the established practices and strategies seem inadequate. In recent history, the clarion call for organizational renewal was made at the National Conference in Polokwane Conference, that a groundbreaking resolution was adopted calling on the National Executive Committee to declare a period of renewal. The 2010 National General Council focused extensively on the tasks of organizational renewal. The 53rd Conference of the ANC in Mangaung elaborated on the strengths and weaknesses of the movement and arrived at the conclusion that there is a need for the movement to embark on organizational renewal. Now we give you a synoptic perspective with the assumption that you have read our discussion document. The discussion document postulates a view that the conditions in which the ANC operates have changed, thus necessitating a comprehensive review of the African National Congress structural design and organizational design. The review takes into account the current structural design, the party constituent structures, ANC parliamentary, legislative, council and caucuses functionality, efficiencies and effectiveness. We pose the question of whether, in the light of subjective and objective challenges, confronting the African National Congress, there is a discernible risk of organizational paralysis manifesting itself through, among others, perceived or real fragmentation of the constituent parts of the African National Congress. Our entry points in this discussion are considerations of the salient political elements drawn from the strategies and tactics. We recognize that organizational renewal cannot be discussed outside our analysis of the current local and global balance of forces. We argue that the ANC remains the leader in the processes for social change as demonstrated by our delivery since 1994. That said, the ANC must retain its dual character as a liberation movement and a political party. However, there are lessons to be learned from the mass democratic movement's appeal to a broad spectrum of sectors and strata, elevating mass mobilization, sustained campaigns on bread and butter issues, and entrenchment of organs of people's power. We are of the view that the ANC can renew itself without losing its traditional outlook. Organizations exist within a political and ideological context. There is an urgent need to strengthen the organizational machinery to achieve the ANC's historic mission. The organization must reorientate itself, readjust and completely reorganize itself and its organizational machinery to be inclusive and representative in all its decision-making structures at all levels, spheres, in order for the organization to be more responsive to the new demands of the current conjuncture, characterized by modern, young, savvy, and media-literate captive markets and voter pools. Modern organizations pay significant attention and resources to the capacity and interface between its back-end office and front-end office in pursuit of its organizational goals. These are complex systems-driven and people-driven organizational processes with change drivers orchestrating the day-to-day functions in line with overarching strategy of the organization. In line with the change drivers in the movement can only be effected to achieve a desired outcome if they are driven by a selected entity for a specifically desired outcome that will result in the targeted action. The core processes of organizational renewal entail consolidating the organizational architecture of the ANC, policy formulation, monitoring and evaluation, relentless communication and battle of ideas, political education and ideological training, constant engagement with the centers of power, flawless engagement with the motive forces. The support processes are essentially the inside-out activities and programs that support and defend the core mandates such as human resource management, financial management, fundraising, research and development, and information and communication technology. Organizational renewal and design in the ANC's perspective is geared towards consolidating the ANC as a movement for social transformation and strategic center of power. This debate will and must address the critical weaknesses of the ANC and the question of the optimal mobilization of the motive forces for change. The paper is aimed at energizing the structures of the ANC, of the Alliance, SANCO, of the South African Civic Organization and all partners, and other youth, student, and women progressive formations. Of critical significance, the debate about the life and soul of the oldest liberation movement in the African continent takes place at the African National Congress, as the African National Congress celebrates the centenary of the ANC's longest-serving president, Oliver Reginald Tambo. During this period and beyond, the current generation owe it to Oliver Tambo. Though there may be ebbs and flows, the ANC proceeds from the optimistic and realistic assessment that Africa is set on a new course of rapid economic growth. The ANC proceeds from the understanding that the balance of forces in the global arena is not immutable. It is a function of objective conditions but critically, it also depends on conscious action by the broad front of global progressive forces. The dangers and organizational shortcomings. There are three main organizational shortcomings and dangers that continue to bedevil the ANC post-1994. Firstly, the challenges of governance and political management of state power have been impacting on the character and values of the ANC as the movement for transformation and servant of the people. Due to the preoccupation with managing internal conflicts, the movement has not been mitigating the dangers that any governing party has to contend with and manage. The danger of social distance and isolation of the party from the masses, the danger of state bureaucratic and demobilization of the masses, the danger of corruption and sins of incumbency, the danger of institutionalized factionalism, ill-discipline and disunity, fueled and inspired by the battles over the control of state power and resources, the danger of using state institutions to settle inner party differences, the danger of neglecting cadre policy, the danger of lack of capacity and capability to implement policies, the danger of gatekeeping and bulk buying of membership, the danger of divisive slate electoral politics, wedge drivers, and the danger of character and political assassinations, and so on. Secondly, the political life of the organization revolves around insidious internal strife and factional battles for power. This is a silent retreat from the mass line to palace politics of factionalism and perpetual infighting. The internal strife revolves around contestation for power and state resources rather than differences on how to implement the policies of the movement. This situation has shifted the focus of the cadres and members of the movement away from societal concerns and people's aspirations. These circumstances have produced a new type of an ANC leader and a member who sees ill-discipline, divisions, factionalism, and infighting as normal practices and necessary forms of political survival. Drastic measures and consistent action against these negative tendencies are necessary to root out anarchy and decay. Thirdly, the organizational capabilities, structures, systems, and processes do not match the tasks and demands of the current phase of the revolution. Although we have a presence of progressive policies and cadres in virtually all pillars of transformation, we are not deliberately building appropriate capabilities to mobilize and engage, lead the motive forces and progressive forces in these pillars, and therefore draw the linkages between pillar and sectoral processes and the overall national objective. Unlike in the pre-1990 period, the ANC is not rapidly training and deliberately deploying competent cadres in accordance with the pillars of our current strategy and tactics. Necessarily, the aim of organizational renewal is to comprehensively address all challenges faced by our movement as it begins its second centenary. Key issues and recommendations for discussion and final resolution for implementation. The ANC must consider detailed cadre policy that is underscored by organizational, ethical, and moral values. The policy must, after adoption, be infused or attached to the code of conduct of the organization. The ANC needs, as a matter of urgency, to review its electoral processes in order to allow for open contest and transparency. Cadres who make themselves available for public office or are nominated must be prepared for their names and manifestos to be subjected to the scrutiny of the ANC structures and their constituencies. The ANC must conduct a massive skills audit at all levels amongst its employees and cadres with the objective of assessing their suitability and all competencies. Subsequent to this, A comprehensive training and development program must be designed to build the intellectual capital of the ANC structures at all levels, branch, region, province, and national. The ANC should consider bolstering the capacity of the Office of the Secretary General as the engine of the organization, focusing on managing the core function of the organization. For this office to perform this crucial task effectively, it will have to employ highly skilled persons with managerial skills to coordinate the overall functioning of the office. This will also include coordinating the programs performed by all departments and units under the Office of the Secretary General. The document recommends that the Office of the ANC must radically grow a host of capacities that we do not have today at head office. The head office must strengthen the organizing and mobilization department in order to establish sector mobilization, paying particular attention to labor, NGOs, and business. The organization mobilization department must conduct a review of youth and women organizational work together with youth and women's leagues. The document recommends that the NEC must be reduced to a sizable NEC comprising of tried and tested cadres of the movement, balanced by youth and women activists. These are cadres who will be selected on the strength of their political and ideological development and make a meaningful contribution to the implementation of ANC policies. The NEC PCs and RCs of the organization need to be driven by strong leadership as a sign of the ideological and political maturity and rigor of our incubation and training organizational institutions. ANC leaders are found in all sectors of society, i.e. civil society, business sector, academia, and others. This will assist the organization in developing and maintaining its position as the leader of society. In this connection, we are recommending that organizations should take firm decision that not more than 65% of NEC members should serve in the cabinet and provincial legislatures. The establishment of the Integrity Committee is welcome. However, there must be a distinction between the Integrity Committee and the Revolutionary Electoral Commission that is being recommended. The Revolutionary Electoral Commission that must be established post-conference as per previous resolution will ensure the screening of cadres and recommending to the Deployment Committee ideologically grounded and intellectually developed cadres for servicing the people of South Africa. In the connection, a careful balance or combination of experience of tried and tested cadres on the one hand and bright young minds on the other will bring dynamism and nurture the new cadre. The ANC should position the Veterans League as a council of elders whose main political function will be to provide advice and counsel to the structures and leadership of the ANC. It therefore follows that due to the special place the veterans occupy in the ANC, the veterans should not contest leadership positions within the ANC. The ANC must of necessity consider reviewing the current branch system and allow for the establishment of branches or constitutionally recognized units at institutions of higher learning and training. It is recommended that the current territorially based branches, ward-based, remain the main form of ANC branch organization. However, allowance must be made for another form of branches, namely sectoral or institutional branches. This must be established by the RCs where it is deemed viable. This could cover places of big population concentration where individual voters share common interest or peculiar traits. Exclusive communities such as university campuses and huge workplaces, corporate institutions, parastatals, etc. ANC regions, sub-regions should consider as their primary tasks the engagement of civil society in their domains. In view of the above, it is imperative to consider allocating original powers and administrative resources to this level. We strongly recommended that province must focus on the centers of power and all the motive forces. The province must establish sector committees and support center of power consciously. Provincial offices should mirror the structural reorganization that will be effected by head office. It is recommended that the NEC Policy Subcommittee must be linked to the Policy Institute as a feeder. Furthermore, head office staff that is responsible for policy and other policy functions, such as research, should be incorporated into the Policy Institute. It is recommended that the NEC Subcommittee and NEC Policy Subcommittees and other subcommittees must serve as interface nodes of the organization with broader public in order to bring their political and technical competencies to bear in the sectors of their work. In this connection, executives of the ANC at all levels from branch to province must be structured in accordance with their responsibility to intervene and provide leadership. The organizing and mobilization department's responsibility must be broken down into targeted sections. The question National Policy Conference must answer is how ANC members can hold the cadres and leaders accountable for the implementation of conference resolution and program of action. What mechanisms and systems should the conference introduce in order to monitor implementation and outcomes? Regional and provincial structures of the ANC have a pivotal role to play in supporting progressive community initiatives. All levels of leadership organs of the ANC must accommodate core and support functions. With respect to the ANC and the ANC caucuses, parliamentary caucus, legislative and council, possibly the biggest challenge is to design an appropriate structure for the management of both government and legislative and legislature work, an area which did not exist before 1994 in our work, but has today become our main preoccupation, the premier pillar of our struggle. The ANC exists and functions in an environment that demands instant decision-making. In this context, integration, inculcating a culture of learning, organization, and information sharing is imperative. The practice of designating a function and issuing mandates without consideration to human resources and financial implication is contributing to organizational and administrative paralysis. The National Policy Conference must pronounce on the possible revenue streams that are sustainable. Membership development and management is at the center of the existence of any political organization or party. This is more so in electoral politics. It is not an exaggeration to say some of the weaknesses which emanated from the inability to devise appropriate administrative procedures transcended into political difficulties for the organization. The ANC must fast-track implementation of the electronic membership system. A policy on how the ANC relates to social media and related aspects of is developed by our communication cadres for approval at the conference. It is reiterated that the proposed political education schools and support for cadres for intellectual development and ideological training be implemented. It is incumbent upon the regional and provincial to ensure that political induction and ideological training is provided. Provision should be made for alternative delivery mechanisms such as study groups, etc. Efforts should be made to strengthen the Veterans League and ensure that they become the lifeblood of the ANC. 20 years into democracy, the ANC have not adequately taken care of the plight of veterans of Umkhonto weSizwe. A majority of these former combatants have been relegated to margins of society. Our revolutionary conscience dictates that the ANC redouble its efforts to restore the dignity of former combatants. A one-stop ANC portal infrastructure should be rolled out to reconnect ANC to the people and membership. It must contain all relevant policy and other documents. The ANC should have a fully automated electronic recruitment and membership management system. The use of technology in the elections processes requires advancement of codification using tools like the ANC Cloud for effective monitoring of the electoral processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mbalula, for that comprehensive statement. I think those who would have read the document on organizational renewal will see that it's an extremely rich document geared at ensuring that we strengthen the organization in order to be able to confront the challenges that are confronting society at large. I'm going to take questions. We will take the first round of questions, 5 hands, then we'll come back for a second round after. I've noted number 1 in front, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 at the back, Nicholas. In that order, please.
Thank you. My name is Tsepo Itanen from the SABC. With regard to issues related to the Organisational Renewal, I've noted that in future it is envisaged to have open contest for political leadership. But there seems to be confusion at the moment with regard to cadres deployed in government or in parliament in terms of them expressing their views, personal views, that negates the position of the ANC as a mother body. How are you dealing with this kind of situation where you have, whether it's a sitting cabinet minister or a member of parliament, expressing his views or his views outside of what has been adopted or in a position of the organization? Thank you.
Next step on, number 2, Natasha.
Hi, question from the business day. I agree with you that the document is very rich and it provides a lot of detail. But the ANC has always traditionally been strong on its organizational renewal document. The challenge has, however, been in its implementation and in actually getting, once the conference is over, in actually getting those policies rolled out. How are you going to make sure that this time they are rolled out? And the other question which links to Temples is about getting ANC members to buy into those policies once they're adopted. For example, the Gila in Angela situation as well as the Marius Francis situation, we've seen ANC leaders defying party orders. How is the ANC going to make sure that this time around leaders actually abide by them? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, Sam.
Ten years ago, you raised these issues, fast-track in 2017. How have you moved in implementing those resolutions that you took at the Pologani Conference in 2007? You yourself have evidence that the ANC is very weak in implementation. And how do you plan on renewing this organization if your character of leadership in the organization is weak? What do you do in the process of cadre development? And lastly, this is the year of the elected conference of the ANC. We are raising these issues. Are these issues playing themselves out as we currently speak with the brutal contestation happening currently? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my question. It's a lot of the on the acknowledgement that the ANC is at risk of isolating itself from society.
We hear you.
Do you not think that, whenever the ANC is confronted with groundswells of the issue of president, the ANC creates a ring of steel around the president, shielding him from public accountability? Do you not think that that sort of political pattern risks isolating the ANC further from the society as well?
Thank you. Last question at the back. In that order, again, Nicholas, that speaks to the document, please. Yes.
Thank you very much for taking my question. Nicholas Ryan from ECA. Minister, or I don't know how I should refer to this in context, but nonetheless, Minister Bulili is suggesting a fundamental change in how cadres of the ANC are identified and deployed only after the December elected Congress. Why only then? Because surely the current inadequate way of deploying and using members may well affect the elected Congress in terms of who is sent there and who is nominated. You're also suggesting a radical change in how the organization interacts with society
Thank you. When he's here, we call him Comrade Mbalula. Comrade Mbalula. Thank you. You will also guide if you would want the other members of the committee to take some questions, Comrade Mbalula.
No, they are free to start if they want to respond. This is a discussion. No, start. I will summarize. This is a deep discussion. Hope knows, you know. So
The issue of,
respond.
I think the National Executive Committee in November took a decision that the issue of membership, gatekeeping, and bulk buying should be dealt with. So they requested all provinces to open up a process of membership capturing, so that whatever membership forms exist with individuals should be brought in. And we have been involved, all the provinces, in a process of bringing in membership into the system, because that has to deal with the issue of preparations for the national conference. So the membership of the ANC would, of necessity, would have grown in that process. The second issue the NEC has emphasized is the issue of membership in relation to how it's processed. The membership gatekeeping and bulk buying has been caused by individuals who manage membership. The Constitution says a branch executive committee has to sit in a collating meeting and process membership. And then that membership should, whether a person becomes a member or not become a member, it's in the Constitution. And it should be, if you are not accepting somebody that deals with gatekeeping, it should be in writing so that people can then go to the region, the province, and ultimately the Secretary General. So the issue of preparing for conference in relation to membership has been dealt with. I mean, in December and January this year, that process has been taking place. Obviously, it's not a foolproof system. Then that is linked to the auditing which will happen in May and June, in terms of ensuring that people are accommodated into the organization. Those who are not going to be accepted as members, there are reasons why they cannot be members. Because the issue of ANC membership, it's linked to whether the organization accepts you as a member, formally in a structure. So the issue of preparations for conference itself, so the NEC has been very, very careful in that issue, because they recognize that if the preparations for conference around membership and systems is not done properly, it can create a problem. And auditing of meetings themselves in preparation of the conference is going to be very central, so that you ensure that there is no fraudulent activity which then exists in that process. So it's a work in progress, which many of us in the provinces are actually implementing. It's also decisions which were taken by the NEC Subcommittee on Organization Building. Let's open the organization, but obviously not collapse its policies in relation to membership, to ensure that you don't have people who feel outside the organization. In the preparation of conference itself, activists who have been trained politically will also be roped into the process, because general meetings have to be convened before the policy conference to discuss the 9 documents, including this critical document of organization building. Because you can't talk policy if you don't have an organization. You have to strengthen organization in order for you to implement policy and monitor that policy in government. The issue of social media, the conference in Mangaung decided that the NEC must adopt, the organization must adopt a social media policy. Not even liberal and neoliberal organization can allow a chaos in their ranks. You know, there are political parties who don't allow dissent. The ANC has not been taking people to DCs for propagating some of the things which are against decisions and policies of the organization. The social media policy will be adopted before conference, so that it guides even debates and approach to debates towards the conference. Because there's time for internal debates in any political party, and there's time for public debate like it's happening now on the discussion paper. So the understanding is that the social media policy will help guide all structures of the ANC to ensure that the debate which happens is not slander, is not insult, it's actually discussion aimed at strengthening the organization. So I think on that issue, there is actually agreement that some of the things which are said on social media are not actually helping to build the organization. But at a broader level, the renewal of the organization and strengthening of the organization will help even in guiding those particular debates and discussions. Some of the people who talk on social media are supporters of the ANC. ANC cannot say to a supporter, you cannot say this or that. A supporter has not committed themselves to abide by the constitution of the ANC, to abide by its code of conduct. It can only do that to its member. But overall, there is an understanding that the organization has to actually operate in an era of social media, and social media is important in terms of influencing opinions of people. It's a form of media. So I think on that score, the question which has been raised, it's important, and the organization is conscious about the importance of social media.
Thank you very much. First, we're an organization that believes that we have not reached inertia in terms of ideas. We subscribe to the notion that organizations evolve within an environment, an epoch, and they are not static. And if organizations don't renew themselves at all time, they either die. And so our question here is about adapt or die. So the ANC at all material times must examine itself in terms of the subjective and the objective factors that evolves at all material times. So if we don't do that, the organization will die. We need to appreciate the weaknesses, subjective weaknesses that we are confronted with, and formulate a response at all times. You will appreciate that the ANC is a big organization and a big liberation movement. It's a broad church. It is not reductionist in terms of its character, that it only subscribes to a particular grouping. It is a multi-class organization. So I think that is how you need to appreciate and understand the African National Congress. And for it to exist over the years, it was guided by particular conventions and principles that they've made it to survive. Other organizations could not, because they did not subscribe to these things that the African National Congress have embraced in order for it to survive. They've collapsed, or in fact they've shrinked, and they've lost the best in their ranks. Now, coming to the first question of Tshepo Ikaneng expressing views, cabinet members are cabinet members. They are not ANC leaders in their own name and right. They are deployees. So when a member of the ANC expresses their viewpoint politically, either by being deployed or invited by structures, they must understand their responsibility in the organization. There is a responsibility. There should be a difference between a member of the National Executive Committee and a branch leader, and the ANC Youth League and COSAS. COSAS can be violent, can express views that even you can come to think about it, is this implementable? And then they want freedom tomorrow. When we were in COSAS, we wanted freedom tomorrow. And the leadership of the ANC had to tell us, wait a bit, slow down. This is the line you must actually take. Leaders of the ANC, and at the macro political level in terms of National Executive Committee, are people when they appear in society who must provide and give direction to membership and society. So the ANC Youth League, for all their sins and what they say, they are an acceptable nerve for the African National Congress. I've said things in the Youth League that myself, when I look back, I don't believe them now. But I accept guidance that we got from the political leadership of the ANC. That is why you cannot shrink the Youth League. Now, responsibility of political leadership at the level of the ANC, NEC, means you must think before you open your mouth. And you must be guided. Equally, it is assumed that when you are elected in the NEC, you are a leader with impeccable credentials. Not time-tested, impeccable. Time-tested is Mandela and Sisulu. But me and Humphrey Ntlemizi, we cannot. because we can still commit mistakes if you think about Terra Lekota and others. So we can still, not in Tlemeza, I'm free Memezi. What are you saying? Yeah, Memezi, not in Tlemeza. So I'm saying that we must then understand that particular point, that we accept the fact that in the context of the debates going to conference, National Executive Committee have expressed itself on these documents, but they equally are members of the ANC. They can express views that are divergent in order to enrich the debate, but they've got the responsibility to lead and provide direction. Meaning their rights as members of the NEC are limited. Even if you've got a view, you can't say to members of the ANC that this is what I believe. Members of the NEC must always articulate policy and display maximum discipline. Remember, when you are at the branch level, there are certain things that the NEC in between conferences does that you don't agree with. But you've got to take the pain that I've got to wait for the next conference, either to get rid of these people or to ululate for the good decisions they've taken. That is the discipline. Now, if you are a member of the NEC, you want a branch space, we'll give you in the next conference. Members of the NEC will give you your position that you are fighting for, branch leadership. It means you were elected by mistake. You are a fault. We elected you with confidence, but factory faults do occur. We then realized, no. This was a slate. This was a faction. This was not our leader. Because leaders give answers to very complicated questions at complicated moments. So there is no line in the movement that says leaders cannot express themselves, but it is expected that dissent in the organization is acceptable, but leaders have got to conduct themselves in a particular way. If the SG were to discipline all of us, this NEC will be gone, because we speak a lot about different things, some of which we undermine even the cohesion of the African national, because we want to look good. If you are in a collective and you want a better perfume than others, then you are wrong, because you've got to toe the line in terms of what has been agreed upon and go back to the next meeting and express your different view. There are many things in society today, in the public discourse about our movement, some of which are populist. But at the end of the day, you've got to keep the discipline of the African National Congress. So our discussion document and the discussion out there seeks to say that we need leaders with impeccable track record. And how are we going to go about to elect those leaders? That is why the notion of revolutionary council. Because if you are in a slate, you can be elected without being properly examined and not even known by branches of the ANC. You can be elected and become a powerful leader, and we ask ourselves, where does he come from? When he's already been elected because he was a product of a slate. But the Revolutionary Electoral Council will be able to say, for all the nomination done, who are these people? And then will pass judgment guided by the prescripts of the ANC principles and conventions and the eye of the needle, which factions don't respect. We as factionalists, we don't respect the eye of the needle. I'm saying we as factionalists, we don't respect the eye of the needle in the organization. So that is what we must understand, because the eye of the needle then becomes the guide in terms of what kind of leaders do we need. The Revolutionary Council will be able to give guidance to that particular point and to be able to examine and to interview and engage individuals who are precisely are nominated by branches of the ANC and interrogate them. Where do they come from? How did they join the ANC, especially for the National Executive Committee and all the structures of the organization? So that you undermine slates. Because we've been talking about slates, you are right, but what have we done about slates? We have not done anything. Slates are continuing unabated. I can stand in front of you and speak like who's the best bishop in the country? Who's not tainted? Eh? No, I'm not talking about, who's the best bishop? Speak like Desmond Tutu, right? And then speak like I'm the best, I want unity and all of that, but backhand, I am actually responsible for factions. So the Revolutionary Council will enable us to unpack the question of leadership so that we don't elect fly-by-nights and we don't elect, bomzegezege. And we seek to open up the discussion in this discussion document to say that when it comes to the question of leadership, can't we infuse in the electoral processes for people to openly express their desire to lead and stop printing funny T-shirts? Let them express themselves. Why do they think they want to become leaders of the ANC? Without undermining the democratic principles. You see, what we are saying is that without undermining the traditions of the ANC. But it is time now, given the explosion, to begin to allow people to express themselves, because it is going to be money exchange hands, and the richest will be the one who win power. And the powerful slate is the one that will lead, irrespective of not being capable. Opening up the question of leadership enable us to know our leaders better and to know their track record. But as it is, leadership is discussed in cocoons. It's not opened up, and it doesn't assist us. And our examination in this discussion says to us, let's try to open this discussion and not actually dig in over things that happen even if we don't like. So that Mbalula must not be elected because he's the one who's on television, he speaks about police every day. And yet there is a good leader besides Mbalula that members of the ANC are not exposed to. And there is a good leader besides Mbalula who members of the ANC will not be exposed to, and that person has got a track record, but because of our positions in society, even now you refer to me as minister, but I'm here as head of organizing of the ANC. Ministerial position supersedes a political role of the National Executive Committee. Even police, when you go to functions of the ANC, the only important person is a minister. If you come like Memezi, you are not known, you are not on television, they say, please. Yeah, kungeni ministers up. But the event is the event of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So I'm saying that those processes and the suggestions we're making here are based on experience, and we seek to address them and to grapple with them and address those issues. Caliber of cadres are weak, and that is, yes, resolutions have been taken. The Organizational Renewal and Design document is not original. It simply collates all those resolutions and like I said at the time when we were presenting, that this is not entirely original ideas, So we have lifted those that are important and at the same time bring about a robust discussion for organizational renewal of the organization going forward. And obviously, there are things that are persistent in the organization and systemic that we need to address. For instance, if you talk about question of our ascendancy to political power and the danger of accumulation of resources, it's a discussion document in 1996 General Council in Port Elizabeth. General Secretary Khalima Muntlante, in his report, speaks about that particular question. So, also, we are informed in this discussion document by other experiences of other liberation movements. We are not the only liberation movement that has come into power and at the same time been faced with these challenges, big as the African National Congress. So if we don't address these challenges, that's how we will lose power and all of that. A ring of steel around the president and the ANC dig in and all of that, it is not correct. It is your own view and it is your own perception. In society that we live in, there is an ideological disposition in society that seeks to say the ANC, the revolution led by the ANC must be reversed. And those people are on the other side, and they can pretend to be this and that and all of that, but they too have got an ideological disposition in terms of overthrowing the African National Congress. And what obtains in society today, from a subjective point of view, you will say that no, you will say that the ANC does not respond adequately, to all of these issues. But the responsibility of the ANC is to examine and respond to the challenges that we are faced with in the current epoch. So there is no question of a still and denial around the president of the African National Congress. If you look at the protests, nobody says we have not seen the protest, but look at the character of the protest and the leaders of the protest, and so on. In themselves, they seek to elevate those issues that they think are weaknesses in the leadership of the ANC to assert their hegemony in society, and characterize South Africa as in an Arab Spring mode, and which is not the case. And when we contest that view, it's not been in denial, you see. We ourselves, we are the ones who have admitted that we have committed mistakes. We are an organization that believes that certain things we could have handled differently in the contemporary politics, and we need to correct and self-correct. But we are in an era of a national conference, and then you are asking us, based on your own disposition, to reshuffle our leadership. And even those who will not do that for their leaders, they are asking the ANC to embark on processes that undermine, its hegemony, its cohesion, and basically do the things that they themselves will not do, and hoodwink society in the direction of their own agenda. Everybody has got a political agenda. There are no holy cows and all of that. The question for ANC members is their political consciousness up to scratch? Because some of them, when they express themselves without passing judgment, you start to think whether they are guided by the political consciousness of the movement. As much as they caution, and they are very much steadfast in the fact that certain decisions must be taken, the question is, what about the cohesion of the movement? And that is what is important. Hope has answered the question of the social media. The question of recycling, I don't know. But the document that we're presenting to you, we're not recycling anybody. What we seek to do is to ensure that we are dynamic. And at the same time, we're an organization that self-correct and reflect at all times. And the organization that does not learn from its mistake and repeat mistake all the time is the organization that does not show its growth and so on. So I think that is very much important. The last point with regard to Business Day, I don't think Lungisa and Fransman anecdotes are important for the discussion documents. They can only serve as to how do we deal with issues going forward, because the Lungisa issue arises from a discussion of the National Executive Committee and the NEC having taken a decision on how to address those particular questions. But in the context of organizational renewal, we need to still address issues that have got constitutional implications so that we don't have people with many caps. One of the issues that we're addressing there fundamentally is the question of saying that we only obsessed with Parliament and the councils and legislatures. What happens to other spheres in society when it comes to spreading, the influence of the African National Congress and deployment? Because cabinet is not the only place to be deployed and the councils. There is a plethora of such in society that we need to consider. That is why we are making a rough decision, a rough proposal there for debate, to say that 65% of members of cabinet, and whatever that it is, somebody was saying, you will never get that, that NEC must not have 65 or 60% of members of cabinet in it, because the perception out there is that once you are in cabinet, you are an NEC member, you are actually, afraid to express your views because you are employed elsewhere and so on. which also raises a very important debate and discussion. Because if you are working somewhere in that particular deployment, do you have the liberty to say that I don't agree with my boss or whatever that it is, and so on? Because in itself, it doesn't augur well in terms of cohesion of that cabinet and how you basically function. So those are debates that we raise and proposals that we make in relation to the discussion. We seek to open them up. In themselves, they are not cast in stone. They can lead to deeper discussions and reflections on the question of the organizational renewal of the African National Congress.
Thank you, Comrade Balula. We'll take the very last round. It's okay if there's only 3 hands. We can do it that as well. All right, I'll start with those who haven't spoken first. Ma'am at the back. Aldrin, number 2. No new hands. Okay, Nicholas, number 3. Sam, number 4. And Seppo, you'll be the last one. Thank you. I've noted you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, thank you very much. My name is Julia Balamajani from ANN7. My question is in regards to ANC member Balula. He mentioned the importance of the Gondowe Caesar.
Sorry, now just check your microphone again. Yeah.
The Gondowe Caesar veterans. And they have stated, the National Steering Committee of the veterans have stated to put ANC's policy conference on a hold to help a consultative conference because policy is not actually what is wrong with the current state of the ANC. Is the ANC willing to have those conversations with the veterans? Thank you.
Comrade Minister Mabini, this Revolutionary Electoral Council, please provide some information about where the members will be drawn from, how they will be selected, and will they need to pass through the same sort of process as the suggestion of the eye of the legal as well? And also, what sort of timeline is being set up? You're saying after elected conference, it seems like time is very short to put together something like that that is a thorough approach and really comprised of members that are up to the task.
Thank you. I'll come to this side. No, give it to Sam. I'll take his question.
You said in some instances the affected force was propelled into leadership and that's the result of factionalism. There is a certain ANC member as minister who said if the red force, they will pick it up. Where do you characterize that minister or ANC member? And also, do you think, on a more serious note, do you think the ANC is adapting to the challenges of society that have been raised by all these protests? As you said, the ANC must either adapt or die. Is it adapting or die? Thank you.
Okay, we won't speak to your first question. I think we've answered that from this podium already. Sidi? Sorry.
Thank you very much. Remember, Lula, you talked about the issue of employment of competent officials within the levers of the state. One of the reasons for the decay of some of the administration of governance issues is SOEs has been the battle between political principles and those deployed by those institutions. You've touched on that briefly, but I want to expatiate in terms of how bad is the situation going forward. How are you going to make sure that those deployed to head those key SOEs really embark on their mandate without actually causing political tension that sometimes we see those institutions not achieving their developmental goals? Thanks.
Thank you. The last question?
Alphonse Pierre from SABC TV News, Comrade Baba, Comrade everything. On the proposal of the hybrid model, can you just expand on the hybrid model that the ANC would like to introduce? So does this then mean that within the SABC or even Transnet, those are parastatals where you have this large concentration of people, that the ANC would be establishing a branch itself, and how does that branch then work within a single organization, and what would be the link between that certain branch or that hybrid model and the RDC? And is the question around, sorry, it is on page 49 about the 100 members quorum in all circumstances. is the suggestion then to limit the number of members that are required for a branch, to reduce it probably where you find that it's feasible to do that? And then the question on generational mix. This is an issue that has been raised by the Youth League as well, and I find that it's not finding an expression in the organizational document. If the ANC is serious about organizational renewal and renewing its leadership, it should speak to generational mix as well. The ANC Youth League, for instance, during its conference spoke about 40% representatives, youth representatives at council. But this document doesn't speak about where the youth of the ANC would find a place in terms of leadership of the party. And then the final question is on strengthening of the Integrity Committee of the ANC. The Mkondo Wesizwe Military Veterans Council, as they call themselves, makes the suggestion that what should happen is that the members of the Integrity Committee should be elected at a conference level instead of being elected by the NEC, so that they are not being infiltrated. So if you say that you want to strengthen the Integrity Committee, how do you strengthen the Integrity Committee when the Integrity Committee is not elected at the conference level? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
On the question of the consultative conference, we have agreed that the policy conference will be extended to 2 days. The ANC National Executive Committee have met with veterans, 101, 105, 103, all veterans. They've actually been met, and there's agreement that the first 2 days of the policy conference will focus on these issues that we're raising here. Because the question here is not about an individual, it's about what confronts the ANC in the current epoch. And those who want to contribute to change the situation and to improve the situation politically in the movement in terms of organizational issues, they are permitted to do that. So the first 2 days of the conference, as the SG has outlined and announced, you will recall that there's agreement on that. So it will be dedicated on organizational issues. That is now in June. There is no separate consultative conference that is going to be held. All issues are interlinked. We're going to be having 5 days on focusing on policy issues in the organization. 2 days of that are going to focus on organizational issues. And that is what we are going to do. That matter is closed, and we are proceeding as we speak with regard to that particular issue. Who will council members, where will council members come from, ENCA? They will come from the ranks of the veterans of the ANC. And probably the determination must be made equally about if they come from the ranks of the veterans, will they be elected, or at the same time they will be elected by the National Executive Committee? Because the National Executive Committee will have vested interest. But our characterization really of the veterans are people who don't have vested interest because they don't want to lead in the organization. That is why we call them the Council of Elders. And that is what is important. So the Revolutionary Council must be of people who are capable, within the veterans, but at the same time, those who really understand the African National Congress, but who don't have the interest to stand anymore in any structure of the movement. So that they are able to follow, because the Revolutionary Council itself will not simply implement what it thinks it is relevant for the movement. It will implement the constitution of the ANC. Because the constitution of the ANC and the eye of the needle is very clear as to become a leader at any level of the movement, what is required. But we have undermined that through the slate. If Hopapo or Mbalula happen to differ, but they still have capabilities and they've got different slates. None of the two will find their place in the coming leadership. We lose a skill in the movement. So the Revolutionary Council will implement principles and to ensure that we do away with slates. And those who will be in the ballot box for voting by members of the ANC, they will not be considered on the basis of which slate they came from. Everybody who's nominated will be interviewed. And the Revolutionary Council will make a determination that no, Kusela is still very young, can't lead at this level of the NEC. She at least belongs to the region. Yeah. This thing of people who come from regions leading at national at no moment must come to an end. So that is what the Revolutionary Council will seek to assist the movement to do in terms of leadership. It will go deeper in terms of issues. Samkelo, factory faults happen anywhere. In any organization, in any factory, there are factory faults. And the ANC have produced such over time. So don't bog me down on who is a factory fault. I've spoken to the question of impeccable credentials. I've spoken to the fact that when members of the ANC elect you to a position of National Executive Committee, there is a period where in which we're very afraid to be in the NEC because we knew that those who belong into the National Executive Committee are people with impeccable credentials. Those are our role models. Some of us who are growing in the organization because they've seen it all. They understand the organization. It's like the Central Committee of the Communist Party. We make comparison with the Central. You cannot. The Communist Party and the Communist Party of China is constituted, I'm sure, by not more than 30 people in a society of more than 1 billion people. And those people who lead the Central Committee, hope, I don't know how many are they because you come from China. How many people constituted the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China? 30. 30. Mostly men. 30. And then they are not just parachuted there. They have undergone a rigorous program of development to understand exactly to lead the party at that highest level. If you ask each one of them, where do they come from? You will not be confused that where do they come from? Because they've gone through a particular process. So that is why we talk about impeccable credentials and guided through the eye of the needle. And then we must ensure to enforce these things happen, we must have a revolutionary electoral council within the African National Congress. The question of deployment, embark on a mandate, maybe we'll come back to that. You will just clarify to me what exactly that means. Hybrid model. We are seeking to expand the influence of the ANC. Yes, the ANC must exist and must have a branch in SABC. What stopped it from doing that? Not only SABC, but other parastatals. Because some of the people of the ANC do not attend established branches in the areas where they come from. But the aim of the branch is for convergence of ideas and to mobilize people around issues that affect society as led by the African National Congress. And that you might find in the campuses, you might find them in the corporate world, and you find them everywhere in society where people come together in numbers. The ANC must exist there. And that is the proposal that we're making here in terms of hybrid structure of the ANC in terms of branch members. Because we all understand and know that all those who are in certain corporate fields support the ANC. They will join the ANC only through the membership electronically and not attend meetings and simply use that membership as a, entry to rallies and all of that. That is not the case. The point is you must contribute to the life of the ANC at the branch level. And at the workplace, you should be able to contribute to the life of the ANC, to be able to ensure that you shape the policy and the direction of the African National Congress. We've got many young people who are members of the ANC in the corporate world, and some of them don't belong to any branch. And as a result, they are missing an opportunity to understand how the African National Congress function. Because when you talk about a branch, they think that a branch is where people only fight for positions. And police must be called all the time to come and basically bring law and order to warring factions of the ANC. So they don't believe that they must go to those meetings. But a member of the ANC, being an academia, will want to make a contribution to the African National Congress at the branch level, at the workplace, to say, here is our paper to critique organizational renewal document of the ANC. Organized. And at the same time, here is our contribution to make our organization to be more effective. But equally, we've got the responsibility to mobilize all sectors of society through our branches and so on. Generational mix is in the document of the ANC through the eye of the needle. So there's no question about it. The question that you must address is that it's a dynamic question of saying, how do young people ascend in the African National Congress? We were in the ANC Youth League, and then from the ANC Youth League, you are being prepared to lead the ANC at the highest level. It is not an imposition. You must earn it. It's not ageism that you start demanding quotas of youth within the executive. Once you demand quotas of youth, you are going to elect young people of the ANC simply because they are young, not because they are well-trained and have got a track record of the ANC. Being young does not mean that we can just pick and choose because of age. Being young means you must be a trained cadre of the African National Congress. It's not about ageism, that no, we're looking for 40% of the youth. You are going to kill the party. Because what it means is that being young does not mean in terms of age, Jackson Mthembu qualifies. You know, look at Jackson, he's still young, you know, in terms of age and generational mix. So he's young. Maybe he has not reached 60 years and all of that. But that is not about age. It's about the question of the movement have prepared young people as a training ground and a preparatory school in the ANC Youth League. How then do they, over time, find their place in the movement, not by quotas, but because of their leadership in the organization? And that is what generational mix is all about. Yes, Integrity Commission must be elected at conference. It's a discussion. The policy conference might agree with that. I might agree with it because when you elect the Integrity Commission, you know of 10 people who were given a mandate to oversee the integrity of the organization so that they are not manipulated and all of that and so on to address whatever that is the case. But also, Integrity Commission must be a structure that is respected and equipped to be able to take independent decisions without due influence and basically apply their mind, and their decisions must be respected. Now, the implication is this. What is the Integrity Commission in relation to the Constitution of the ANC? At the General Council, we took a decision that all the decisions must be reinforced. Then policy conference will pronounce on that particular matter. What did you say, SABC, on the issue of deployment?
Sorry. Oh, was it you? Okay.
No, I can hear.
Okay. The issue concerned about the decay in some of our SOEs where we saw maybe the boards fighting with the executives that are running those institutions. I mean, the question of FRASA, including ministers also from the executive, then maybe getting bearing of plans in terms of where does the authority lies. I mean, this has affected badly on some of the running of the SOEs. Is ANC concerned about?
Yeah, the ANC is concerned, obviously, about that. And we think that within the ANC and society broadly, we do have people who can run those SOEs, but it's not really only individuals. It's about SOEs and their role in the current paradigm in terms of economic development. How do we make them effective to deliver in our projections of economic growth in the country and make them viable and not just people who are eating from the purse without basically generating enough financial capital for us to float in the current challenges that we're actually faced with. So SOEs are important in the economic development of the country and so on, and that is what other commissions in terms of the organization preoccupy themselves with, particularly economic development, social transformation. They are looking into that. But when it comes to the question of deployment and how we place people and so on, we don't only look at SOEs. What we say, the sphere of the ANC, capable leaders, I mean individuals with capabilities, it's not only parliament, it's not only legislatures. SOEs included, and the corporate sphere, members of the ANC must be able not only to be deployed, they must mushroom in those structures in society, and not only preoccupy and think that the only avenue for deployment is cabinet, legislatures, provincial MECs, and all of that up until local government. So the document says we must broaden the horizons. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our press briefing. Please may I request that you join us for the live chat on social media that will take place from 12 o'clock. Some of those questions that we may not have gotten to, Comrade Mbalula will be able to answer then. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time, where we will be dealing, I believe, with education and health, social transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No,
How's it?
not any.
No, I'm not answering that. Sure. Yes.
The model that you are applying when it comes to these professional leadership positions, which party is the highest? I think